Do you need it raised up higher?
I do need it raised up.
I forgot how tall you are.
A little bit. I'll just hold the box. I'll hold the box. Just one on each side. We'll be fine.
How is that mic height? Is that a little...
Oh, it's better. Yeah.
For those who are listening, we had to raise Steve's mic because he's tall. And we're using some of my books.
Tall as hell.
I'm not that tall.
How tall are you?
I'm 6'3".
That's tall.
It's like a normal
It's
tall.
not that.
That's like normal tall. It's not tall.
I guess that is normal tall. That's not like, whoa, what's the weather up there, buddy?
From the rainy city of Seattle, we have Stephen Cheatum, an NYU dropout. He kicked off his career in live-action 3D as a stereoconform editor and has transitioned from the vendor side of VFX Editorial to the cutting room side. With credits like Megan, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Here, and The Creator, we discuss the complexity of his FileMaker Pro database, the challenge of managing 13 projects at once, and how we're all just trying to figure things out. Welcome to this episode of Sips and Clips. My name is Leanne McFalls.
My name is Michael Schusterman.
And today we have a pretty cool guest. I'm trying to switch it up. Pretty cool guest over here.
What do you say normally?
We have a very special guest today.
We have an ethereal guest.
We have an ethereal guest, guys, especially because he's so tall. Do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Stephen Cheatum. I am a VFX editor and from the Seattle area who now lives in LA.
Wow, you just answered 5 questions in one go.
All right, guys, welcome to that was thank you for this episode.
All right.
To be efficient.
Yeah, love it. Well, we have to start our show, of course, with what we're sipping on. So I will let Stephen go first because he is our guest today. Stephen, what are you sipping on?
I have an iced oat milk latte from Blackheart Coffee in Lake Balboa, which is near my house.
Oh, you're in Lake Balboa?
Yep.
So it wasn't too bad of a drive to get over?
No, it's actually... secret. This is the second iced oat milk latte of the morning for me. I had one on the way here because I
you have two?
I didn't think I could sit with it next to me and not drink it.
Yeah.
So I bought 2, and now this is number 2, which is actually number 5 for the day, coffee-wise.
Oh, for the day?
Yeah.
You had 3?
I had 3 cups of coffee
Wait,
before.
what time did you wake up this morning?
It's like 7:30.
And you had 3 cups of coffee?
Yeah.
In 3 hours.
What do you mean you had 3 cups?
I brewed a pot of coffee, and then I drank 3 cups.
Yeah, Michael, do the math. Come on.
Wow.
I drink 3 cups of coffee every morning.
I think you drink like 5 cups of coffee throughout the day, which I was like, that's so crazy. But 5 cups of coffee before you got here is like intense as hell. My God.
You know, I like coffee. I remain caffeinated.
Do you drink it? How do you drink it when you're at home? Do you drink it black or do you have oat milk at home?
Just oat milk, a little bit of sugar.
Look at this guy, classy. 5 cups of coffee before
5's a light day.
10 a.m.
My God.
What about you, Michael? What are you sipping on?
I am trying to go to more coffee shops before I come here in the morning to try to switch it up. So I was going to go to a place called Yala Coffee. And then when I got there was a line around the block. So I went, nope, and then plugged in coffee shop near there and went to a place called Wada Peach. It's okay. Having an almond latte. It's
Classic.
fine. Cassidy, you got black coffee. Want to give you a quick, what do you think?
I'm a big cold brew fan, and I like black coffee because I like a bitter taste. This one's a little more watery than I like, but it's not bad.
6 out of 10?
Yeah, like a solid
All right.
6.
We'll go somewhere else next. Yeah, we're trying it. We're going to start creating a little log of all the places around town.
Yeah, we do need to go to more coffee shops, and Michael
Places
was
that are
very
different.
kind to ask us if we wanted any, but I had already picked up my
It's all right.
drink, which is the
Leanne just hates me.
conglomerate that is Starbucks. Really, it's just, honestly, it was
What would you give Starbucks out of 10? Like a baseline. If
I feel
Starbucks
like it
is their
depends on
baseline.
what I get, because remember that I don't like coffee, and I'm all
Okay.
for the sugary drinks. So if I'm getting...
Then just as a coffee shop entity.
Fine.
Fine, like
I'm
5?
trying to think of a number. Yeah, I guess it'd be like a...
That's our
5,
middle of
like
the road.
Like a middle, yeah. Like it's just like a... You're just going to go in and stop. I don't like how expensive it is, but then you compare it to California and like fancy coffee shops are expensive, so it doesn't really matter.
Yep.
But we ran out of coffee in our house. So yesterday we did walk to M Street. So shout out to M Street again. And then today, because I picked up breakfast at this corner store that's literally right next to Starbucks. So I just picked up Starbucks while I was picking up breakfast. And I am drinking a cinnamon dolce latte. As well as I went a little crazy, guys, and I got apple juice.
Whoa.
I was really craving some apple juice. I used to drink it all the time as a kid. I have Martinelli's apple juice that I'm drinking, and it's delicious.
I
Wow.
like that bottle is the shape of an apple.
Yeah, right? It used
It's got the little leaves and stuff on it too.
Because I think that they served them in glass bottles, like
Did they?
originally.
Wow.
But probably when they went more consumer, they went plastic because of people being.
I still think Snapple does not taste as good now that it's in plastic bottles instead of glass bottles.
I haven't had it in a plastic bottle.
It's not like
in a
it's
while.
like it doesn't the crispness is not there. It does not hit as hard. Should we get into it, Leanne?
Guess we should get into it and
Let's
stop
start
talking
interrogating Stephen.
Yeah,
It's fine.
yeah. Steven, why don't you give us a brief rundown of your story? Well, you're from Seattle.
Yes.
You've told us this. How did you get into, I guess, visual effects or filmmaking, whichever one kind of.
It's definitely
came
filmmaking
first.
first.
Okay, tell us how you got into it.
You know, I was always the kid that when given an option on a project to make a video as a submission would do the video version of the project because that always was fun. And I thought, this is cool. And it was all in camera, like editing. But I was more of like a math and science kid. Video and film and television didn't super interest me as a career for a long time. And then I saw the special features for Lord of the Rings. And seeing how movies were made was such a like eye-opening experience for like, there's a whole career here. There's a whole world that I didn't know about. That sort of was the spark. And then I went to a friend's house and he had, I think it was like Premiere 6. And I had never seen an editor, like an editing software in the wild before. I was looking at it and I was thinking about all the like videos I'd made that were just in camera editing. And I was like, this would be so much easier. This would be so much easier. And so I convinced my parents to get me Premiere. And
What year is this?
this would have been like 2003.
Yeah. Okay.
And that sort of kicked off my filmmaking in high school in earnest. So I remember getting really into the special features of Lord of the Rings and then wanted to be more involved in production. And my high school didn't have like a film program, so I joined the drama club. And, you know, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in the drama club. I had friends who were in it. I was also a tennis player, and those schedules conflicted. So the first play was during the tennis season, so I couldn't commit that much time to being in the play, but I could commit the time to working behind the scenes. I realized pretty quickly that I much preferred working behind the scenes than being on stage. So I kind of was like, okay, that makes sense. Well, I'll just work in film production. That sounds like a great idea. And I never really enjoyed school. And my parents were so specific about the need for me to go to college that I eventually just said, fine, I'll go to film school.
Like, this is the thing I like doing.
Yeah, it's I like making films. I want to work in film. I think I watched Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and it was that kind of eye-opening moment of, this is the kind of movie I would love to make. So I thought, sure, I have to go to college. I'll go to film school. What's the best film school? And I just Googled, what's the best film school?
Wow.
And it said NYU or UCLA. So I applied to NYU early decision and got accepted. And I don't really know how, but it's kind of like the Elle Woods moment of like,
What? Like it's hard?
like it's hard? And I loved film school. What I didn't love was the everything around film school, all the electives that were required and all the school parts that were required. And so I struggled with my non-film classes and just didn't really know why I was there, because I never wanted to be in college. I always just wanted to move to LA and like start working in film.
So how did you get to LA? Did you just move to LA right after?
So I was really struggling with school. And I went to a professor to talk to him about my struggles. And he basically said, you don't need this degree to work in film, to have a career in film. If you think you have what it takes, and like I've seen your work in class, like you can have a career, just go have a career. And so I dropped out.
Wow.
And I went home.
What year is this? Of like how many years?
This would
did
have
you go
been,
through?
I was 2.5 years into college. So before I went home, so from New York, I had a friend who had a friend in Pasadena who needed a roommate.
Okay.
So I was planning, I was like, I'm going to go to LA. I have gotten this apartment and went home for in December and said, I'm leaving school.
You were like,
I'm going
home.
I mean, I didn't tell my parents I'd gotten the apartment.
Yeah.
I just said I'm leaving school.
Wow.
And I almost ruined that relationship with my parents. They were so mad.
Yeah.
Because they didn't understand. Like, I don't think they ever, even now, fully understood that, like, film was more than just directors and actors.
Yeah.
That there was a chance to have a full career in the industry. And they always were like, well, it's so unlikely. And you don't have a degree, so you have nothing to fall back on. What are you, like, why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
I just packed up a car and left and drove to LA.
And at that time, were you interested in VFX and post then? Or
No, I still wanted to work in production. So I spent a lot of time PAing on commercials and promos, all sorts of very small productions, doing stuff like watching printers at 3 a.m. on Sunset Boulevard because you were the PA and everyone else was off shooting something in a car.
Yeah.
I, at the time, was living in Pasadena. So this was 2009. So it was on the heels of the recession and the writer's strike. It was in the middle of the recession and on the heels of the writer's strike.
God.
Not a great time to be trying to break into any sort of industry. So it was really a struggle. And I also didn't know anyone. The only person I knew in LA was my roommate, who I had met when I moved to LA. And so I decided, like, I'm going to do some stuff to make some friends or meet some people. And still not really being familiar with Los Angeles, signed up for a softball league. And on that team, there was a post PA who was also on that team by the name of Chris Fustinas.
Chris! I love Chris.
So, I mean, he would have been still PAing at the time. And I remember talking to him about, like, oh yeah, I'm trying to work in production. And he was like, oh, I'm trying to work in post. And like, so it was like, okay, cool. Like, good luck with that. And, you know, someone else on the team was she was the stereo coordinator on Green Lantern. And she asked me, because she knew I was kind of looking for kind of anything at that point. I was trying to branch out. I thought, like, well, production PAing is not very fun. What else can I do?
Yeah.
And she knew that a company called Prime Focus was looking for stereo conform editors.
Now, can you explain what a stereo conform editor is?
I can. I will say, when she said that there's a company looking for stereo conform editors, I had no idea what a stereo conform editor was.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I think I could probably do that. And so she got my information. They called me. They interviewed me. And I remember they were like, no, we use a program called Framestore. And I was like, I've never heard of that. And they were like, it's fine. And I was like, cool, I'll learn it. I'll figure it out. So stereo conform editor is back during, so this was 2011, right at the tail end of the stereo craze, when everything was 3D.
3D. Okay.
Everything was 3D.
Yes, I know we mentioned this before on the podcast, but stereo in this context is going to be referring to 3D.
Yes.
Okay.
Stereo, 2 eyes. So the stereo conform editor, we were basically a visual effects company doing the stereo conversion. So taking a 2D normally shot film, and in my case, it was for Episode 1, Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace.
Oh, wow.
And converting it to 3D.
Wow.
So you're essentially creating one of the eyes. So it's a lot of roto, a lot of paint to kind of separate the background from the foreground and offset it by a few inches.
Oh, is that how it works?
Yeah.
I have no idea how, I have no idea how you are going to create a 3D image. Oh my God.
Yeah. So the stereo conform editor's job is basically just to run the dailies of the work. So the work from the artist comes in, you get a list of shots, you bring them all into the review room, and you loop them over and over again so that the supervisors can give notes.
Wow.
And keeping track of all of the versions and making sure that, you know, if they want to look at stuff in context, you have the cut ready to look at stuff in context.
But when you say shots, aren't you doing the whole film? Aren't you?
So they still break it up into shot on a shot by shot basis.
That makes sense.
Because you have to. Otherwise, the paint and roto, that gets like keyframe madness. So you're still breaking stuff up into shots.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
What was interesting about Star Wars is like there was a bunch of stuff in CG that they had done on that film, but ILM didn't turn any of it over or something, or it was cheaper just to do the paint and roto than it would have been to re-render a second eye on a lot of the scenes.
Jeez.
So they just went through. I mean, we had like 120 versions of Jar Jar Binks hanging off of a tank barrel.
And for those who don't know what roto is, listen to our episode with Chris Quago because he explains what it is.
That was my first experience in any sort of visual effects adjacent job or editorial adjacent job. So I had that stereo job and then the stereo bubble collapsed.
Right, yeah.
How long did you have this job for?
I think it was only like 9 months, maybe.
Okay.
The stereo bubble collapsed. I got laid off. And then I'd enjoyed it though. In a weird, it was the first time I ever had interacted with a big name director as well. We did a test on Inception and they brought Nolan in to look at our test. And I was like 24 or 25 sitting in this room with Christopher Nolan as he's watching our work. And I was petrified.
Yeah.
I maybe had been there for a month and a half at that point.
Yeah.
I was just like, what am I doing here? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So now I have this skill set, right? Like stereo conform editor is a skill that I know I can do. Didn't really know how that would translate to anything. And then I got a job working as everyone's favorite term, a predator for a YouTube, someone who wanted to like make a YouTube multi-channel network. They had come from one of the big MCMs. They were not one of the creatives, and they had thought, I can do this myself. And they were not creative.
Yeah.
And it was infuriating to be working at a place for someone who had no creative bone in their body. So I was in this like, miserable warehouse doing these miserable YouTube videos. So I was working for that place, and I got a call from somebody who had worked at Prime Focus, and they needed a temp for 3 weeks at a visual effects company called Shade VFX. Because their visual effects editor was going on vacation to Thailand for 2 weeks, and they needed someone to cover. So I went in, I interviewed for it, and I was like, I have never worked in visual effects, but it seems adjacent to stereo conform. And they were like, well, here's what we use. We use a program called Hero and a program called Smoke. Do you know how to use those? And I said, nope. But I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm sure I can figure it out. It can't be that hard, right? And I didn't hear back. About 2 weeks later, I was driving to my terrible job on a Thursday morning, and I got a call from the vice president of the company, and they said, hey, can you start on Monday? Mm-hmm. And I said, for 3 weeks? Yep, I'll start on Monday. And I drove to my terrible job, and I said, I'm leaving tomorrow. Tomorrow's my last day. Goodbye.
Wow.
And I left that job for a 3-week fill-in position, and I was at that 3-week fill-in position for 4 years.
Wow.
I learned the programs. I picked them up. I think being honest and saying like, no, I don't know the program, but I'm confident that I can learn it.
Yeah.
Is probably one of the reasons they were comfortable hiring someone that maybe didn't have the experience that they wanted. And I proved myself to be valuable. They realized having a second person editorial was going to be helpful for that company as they were expanding. And they wanted to keep me on. The editor came back from his vacation to Thailand and said, can we keep him?
Yeah.
So I was there for 4 years, and that's where I really cut my teeth as a vendor side visual effects editor.
So you started just straight as a visual effects editor.
I think my title was like data wrangler when I first started, and then assistant VFX editor at some point. The thing about the vendor side of visual effects is a lot of companies will use editorial as an entry point into their company. So they'll start in like data IO, or in my case, just like an assistant visual effects editor or data wrangler, where you're just running dailies, uploading and downloading stuff from the clients, kind of the basic IO work that needs to happen to kind of make the rest of the studio go. And then you can spring into other departments. I went to Framestore eventually, and Framestore, they absolutely are the company that uses editorial as a springboard. So they'll bring people into IO, move them to editorial, and then move them into like Flame artists. They'll do like Flame artist training. So Flame is like a big visual effects software for mostly for commercials, and they will use editorial as like a way to get people in who are not as experienced, that they can train up on these like complicated visual effects programs. So it's kind of interesting that editorial is it's kind of an entry level position on the vendor side, whereas VFX editor on the show side of things is definitely not an entry level position.
No, it's not. So can you go again through the process of like where you would, when you say editorial, like what do you mean? What does that mean in a VFX?
Right. So the VFX editor's job on the vendor side is to be the kind of point person at the beginning of a shot and at the very end of a shot. So you get from the client, you'll get the plates, and at minimum, you get the plates, the full res footage from DI, and the reference from editorial.
Okay. And this editorial from show side.
Yes, from the client.
Because the client in this term is going to be like show side.
Right,
yes, Yes.
What you guys do. What I do now, but like from offline.
Yeah, from off. Yeah.
So you'll get a ref. At minimum, you get a ref and you get the plates. And your job is to basically you put them in a timeline and you say, this ref matches what I have been given. So they're giving me this shot. It looks like it's this shot. These all line up. And then you're ingesting that plate into your studio's pipeline. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So every studio has its own pipeline because you're working on so many different shows all at the same time. Mm-hmm. You want your artists to have one kind of thing that they're expecting. So they don't have to constantly be like changing their workflow for different shows. So the editor's job is to take all the disparate pieces from all the different shows you're working on, ingest them into your pipeline so they all have the consistent naming formatting, consistent file locations, all that stuff. So the artists don't have to think about any of the like behind the scenes. They can just, there's like, oh, I have to work on this shot. I'm going to grab this shot from the folder and I'm going to start doing my work. And it looks like every other shot I have done while I've been working here. So there's a consistency that you want your artists to maintain so that they can focus on the artwork instead of having to worry about why is this formatted this way or that way. So, and then we are also the out point. So the artists will render their shots. Those shots get made into QuickTimes, and those QuickTimes come back to editorial to QC to make sure like the artist worked on the right frame range, that it looks like it's supposed to look, that the color pipeline is working correctly, and that what we're sending back to the clients matches what they have in their Avid. So it's you're kind of the first person to see a shot and the last person to see a shot. So if something is wrong when it's going out the door, that's on you.
Okay.
So you're the last person to be like, hey, there's a problem with this shot, so we're going to fix it.
And that position is more of like the entry, quote unquote, level position. Like there's not like a PA or anything like
not
below
usually,
you,
no.
right? Okay.
Because, you know, their needs are different. So instead of having like a production assistant, they'll have client service teams.
I see. Okay.
So, you know, or the receptionist and client services. And so you don't have the support for it. Editorial is a really small department at a visual effects company. Shade, for instance, had about 50 people in the LA office. We had 2 editors.
Wow.
And then the New York office had like 30 artists and 1 editor. And visual effects is a small field to begin with. And so editorial is a small field within a small field.
Yeah. I guess I'm wondering that like if you were wanting to start out at one of these vendor companies, right? Fresh out of college, don't know anything. Would you want to then go as like the receptionist or client services, or would you want to?
If you want to do editorial work, you would want to look for like a data IO position.
Data IO, okay.
That'd be the kind of entry level, or like a junior editor, like junior VFX editor kind of.
Okay.
Something in that realm would be totally fine for someone who's just starting out, because ultimately you're doing mostly just uploads and downloads and checking to make sure. It's a lot of like, does it match? Does this frame match what it's supposed to look like? Yep. All right. It's not creative. It's not a creative position, which for a long time for me was great because it's like binary, like this right or wrong. And I really appreciate that aspect of it. Like, oh, this shot is right. This shot is right. Oh, that shot's wrong. Here's the note.
Yeah.
Editorial on the vendor side is a position where you want to be as unseen as possible.
Yeah.
If you are unseen, it means everything is fine.
Yeah.
But if you're seen, you're doing your job wrong.
Yeah. Or something went wrong.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, no.
Yeah. Like you never want to hear from the editor. Like it's just a bad time.
Yeah. When you're working at one of these vendors.
Yeah.
How many projects are you individually as a VFX editor normally juggling at any given time?
I mean, it definitely depends on the size of the vendor. The most shows I ever worked on at once, I think, was 13.
Wow.
Yeah, it was at Crafty.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crafty Apes,
Crafty
for anybody
Apes, yep.
who doesn't know that.
And are you working on all 13 every single day, or is it
Not every single day, because sometimes you'll have a show where you only have like one scene or a couple shots.
Gotcha.
And then you'll have a show where you have 300 shots.
Yeah.
Is this across the board in terms of like TV, film, reality, or documentary?
Almost never reality.
Okay.
So Shade was mostly like TV with a little bit of like lower, like mid-budget film. And then I was at Framestore for a bit, and that was all commercials, and which is a whole different thing. And then I was at Crafty Apes, which was kind of everything from TV to major films.
Did you find anything different between these different mediums as far as like number of shots, or what? Like, is it like, oh, a TV show, I found that there were fewer shots than working with a feature film, or vice versa? Or was it just the same?
It's all
around?
kind of the same because the vendors are all bidding out for shots, and it depends on what the productions give them. So like you could have 900 shots on a film, or you could have one scene in a film, or you could have the entire work of a TV show, or just one episode of a TV show. So it's like very dependent on the project and what gets bid out to the studios. So what gets bid out to the vendors, you know, and that's always the producer's jobs and not really yours as an editor. Like I almost never knew what was coming in until it came in. It'd be like, oh, here we're getting this show. And then you'd get the spec sheet and all of the formats that you need to transform the plates to, and all of the reformats and resizes and all the fun stuff, the color pipeline. Every show is different, and that's part of the editor's job, is to make sense of everything you're getting. So I will say, like, the smaller the budget, the harder it was sometimes to like match stuff, because the bigger budget shows would have dedicated teams who had dedicated pipelines and could give you all this extra information about every single shot. Whereas like a TV show that doesn't have any visual effects team is just an assistant editor sending out some plates and a reference. And you're like, hey, what's the color? How does this color work? And they'll just be like, I don't know.
I don't know, man.
Just figure it out. So, I would say working on the bigger shows and bigger films was easier in some ways, just because you can get more out of the clients versus television. Some of the television shows I worked on where it was like, they'll give you nothing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is there a project or a show that you were on that stands out as like particularly tricky to manage when you were vendor side?
Yeah, The Creator.
Oh, we've talked about this.
We can gloss over that.
No, listen. I get it. Listen, we did deliver a bunch of DSLR footage, and we're like, make this work.
So generally, what you get on the vendor side is you get a reference, the plate, and what's called a count sheet. The count sheet is just a PDF that has all the shot information. And ideally, those three things are the same. On The Creator, I would get shots that all three of those things were different.
Fun time.
It was great. It was great.
Listen, we are allowed to talk shit about my movie. We are allowed to talk shit about my show as much as we want.
Do you guys create the VFX IDs, or
that comes from offline?
Okay, so they say this is what we want as our ID, and then you just follow.
Correct.
That, except for your own internal. I'm sure you guys have your own internal naming system.
They'll say, here's this shot number, and I ingest it as whatever internally we're calling stuff. And then when it comes back to the vendor, or when it comes back to me to send back to the client, I have to make sure like the naming conventions are correct. And sometimes that gets confusing, because when you're working on 8-10 shows, you have 8-10 different naming conventions that you're kind of trying to juggle. Sometimes they're identical naming conventions, and so you'll get a shot number and be like, wait, what show is this even for? Like, the shots are the same numbers.
Oh God.
That's probably the hardest part, is juggling that many different specs and shows and shots of different things.
That's what I was wondering, because every show probably names it differently. So you have to know which show is using
ideally you're setting all this up at the beginning of a show. So when you're doing the setup of a show, you're saying, here's the naming convention. So everything that gets rendered with the correct formats and the correct naming conventions and the correct color. And then you don't have to worry about it. You only worry about it if something goes wrong.
And I think you mentioned earlier, you said you brought it into your own timeline, right?
Yeah.
What software are you using?
Primarily a program called Hero. Hero is a timeline-based kind of GUI for Nuke, which is the general VFX software. The software that most VFX shops use is called Nuke. It's a node-based visual effects software.
Yeah,
it's really powerful. Hero is a Nuke-based timeline editor, basically just a conform tool.
Gotcha.
So it's a timeline.
Gotcha.
It lets you export with Nuke nodes.
Just lets you to organize everything.
In a timeline, kind of look at the ref versus the shots.
And you just have the VFX shots in this, or do you have the whole movie? You have every reel in there?
It depends on what the clients give you.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes they'll give you the whole thing. Sometimes they'll give you sequences with your shots. Sometimes they'll just give you the shots with no reference, with no context.
Wow.
You almost never get sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's just looking at quiet videos, just hoping you got it right.
Yeah.
It depends. It depends on what they're willing to give you. I think I prefer getting sequences. You don't need the reels. That's too much. You don't need the whole movie. That's for timeline management. I'm cutting all that stuff out anyway and going to sequence based. Having just the shots is easier in you just drop everything, you kind of string it all out and it works fine. But a lot of times for a lot of visual effects, like driving comps or anything that you need continuity between shots, having the sequence is really helpful to be able to review stuff in context so that oh yeah, this background needs to move this much in this car scene. Or it's consistent from shot to shot, so you're not jumping around in space. So having the context is super helpful from the visual effects shop's perspective.
I see. Yeah.
But yeah, you don't need the whole movie. You don't want the whole movie. It's too much.
What is it like receiving notes from multiple cutting rooms at the same time, I guess? How are you personally juggling it, and how does it get juggled?
Well, that's the coordinator's jobs.
Oh, okay. So
that's the editorial that doesn't have to worry about notes.
You were only a editorial on these, right?
Yeah.
Or were you also a VFX artist?
No, I was never an artist.
Okay, just editorial.
It's a whole different field. Chords are kind of the backbone of a vendor. Not only are they communicating with the clients about everything, they are also coordinating all the artists to make sure the artists get all their notes correct. They're coordinating all the different shows. They're making sure that you know what needs to go out, you know what's coming in. A VFX editor's best friend on the vendor side is the coordinators. They are so important. And if you want to get into production, like producing on the VFX side, Chord is where you generally would start. That's sort of the entry point to VFX production. And it's super important. And I always admired the work that they did because it would have been impossible for me to keep track of all that stuff.
So they're the ones who are getting the notes,
Yes.
and they're delegating out to whoever needs to know.
Yeah, most places use a piece of software. It was called Shotgun, and then it turned to ShotGrid, and now it's called Autodesk Flow something.
And now it's called.
I don't know what it is now.
Just try to Google
but
it. You'll find
it's essentially a web-based spreadsheet for visual effects tracking, and it's amazing. Every show has every shot, every sequence. So they're getting notes from clients. They just go to the show, they drop in all the notes for all the shots, and then all of those notes get served directly to the artists so that they can see those notes, and it gets added to their hit list so that they can address the notes. It's all very streamlined and very easy to kind of manage when you have 12 different shows.
Yeah, that's what I'm like, oh my God, how do you even keep track of which shows are wanting what? And then not even the general Shogun just popped in my head for some reason, but not being Shogun, those shots need to be more blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's no, all of the 800 shots that you have for Shogun have a specific note attached to it. That's just, and then 13 shows at the same time.
Well, and it's more than that too, because I think when I was on 12 shows, I was not the only editor who had shows. We had two other editors who were also working on 8 shows each.
Oh my God. So how many years did you work as a VFX editorial vendor on vendor side?
10 years. So I was at Shade for 4 years. And then I worked for a guy named Dave Van Dyke. He ran a
related to Dick Van Dyke?
No, but I'm sure he gets that joke a lot. So he ran a really small shop, and that was a really interesting job because he didn't have a render farm to send shots to render to. Everything was local. And when I got there, he was they were running out all their quick times for editorial in After Effects. So they'd bring in their EXRs, their high-res media, they'd apply the color and render the QuickTimes out of After Effects, which meant every single shot had to have its own After Effects project.
Oh, God.
And I looked at it and I said, there is a much better way to do this.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and said, great. Figure it out. So I basically rebuilt their pipeline
Wow.
from scratch and created their workflow for their artists to render their EXRs, so then I could take their renders into Hero, and Hero would apply the color, and Hero would export out the QuickTimes in the correct format. And that way I could bring their high res into the timeline and render out from the timeline and QC at the same time. I didn't know what I was doing, and Nuke has a lot of backend Python and TCL as a code base, and I do not know either of those languages. And I had to teach myself as much as I could learn in terms of the Python that was required to do what I needed to do to build out this workflow. And I spent a lot of time after everyone else would leave just testing Python code and hoping that it would work, and it wouldn't work, and trying, and eventually it would succeed. And I realized that moment of success, when you've been working on something all day and it finally works, is like the greatest feeling in the world.
Oh, yeah.
That puzzle you've been trying to figure out, you've just been trying to crack this thing all day, and it suddenly works. And it's just like, I would literally jump for joy in the office. And I was alone in this office, and just be jumping up and down and being like, yeah, it works. Like, I got it. And then from there, I went to Framestore, which was wild, because I went going from a company with like 8 people to one of the biggest visual effects shops in the world. I think it's number 2. Was such a wild change, because I didn't have to do any of the pipeline stuff. They had whole pipeline teams. Yeah. I was nothing I had taught myself was at all relevant there.
That's so funny.
It was really wild. But Framestore was really cool because it was commercials. So I was working for the Chicago office. This was during COVID. I was working for the Chicago office. And this was also when I started realizing I didn't want to live in the vendor life forever. I had I'm not going to say I had seen everything, but there was very few problems left to solve.
Yeah.
There was very little left to learn.
Yeah.
For Caesar Web.
Yeah. And I kind of realized like the only place to go was management, like be some sort of like editorial manager. And I was like, I don't really want to be an editorial manager. Like, I like doing the editorial work. So how am I going to keep doing editorial work? But Framestore was really cool because commercials are crazy. Like, you'll get a commercial, it'll be like the 90-second version, like the director's cut, the 60-second version, the 30-second version, the 30-second alternative version, 4 15-second versions, 7 6-second versions for like social media. And your job, or my job there, was to make sure that the longest version of each shot was the parent shot. You would think like, well, it's going to be in the 60, right? Like the longest version of every shot is going to be in the longest timeline. That's not true.
Wow.
Because what happens when you go shorter and shorter, you have to be more creative with how you're telling that story in a shorter and shorter format. So sometimes shots will get longer because they need the longer shot for you to process what's actually happening. Whereas in the 60-second version, it's just like, yeah, we've already established that they're in this place or they're doing this thing. So we can use 40 frames of it versus needing 100 frames of it. So I would have timelines of 9 or 10 versions of the same edit stacked on top of each other, chopped up to try and find the longest version of each shot so that I knew where the frame range needed to be for every single shot.
My God.
So that the artists weren't having to like go back and extend a shot by 10 frames on the head.
Yeah.
They could just do it once and drop it into all of the cuts.
So what made you finally make the decision? You didn't want to be an editorial manager, so that was that the reason you wanted to swap over to client side?
I think ultimately I also realized like when you're on the vendor side, you have so little control over anything. And it started to really bug me. You know, I was always interested in working in film. And at a certain point, like you get a company credit on the vendor side enough times where only the company is named at the end of the credits. And you're like, I worked on this for 7 months. And it's like, oh yeah, the company credit at the end. And it's just so little recognition. Also, that people would ask what I did. And I'd be like, oh, I'm a visual effects editor. I work for a visual effects company. And they'd be like, oh, you make the visual effects. I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
No, I push data. I push frames around.
I have spreadsheets.
Yeah, like it's not. And there's something, in a weird way, it stopped being fulfilling. I think because I had felt like I had kind of plateaued. And because the job a lot of times is used as an entry level position, it got harder and harder to find like someone who would treat it as a more senior position, even though like you've got 10 years of experience and feel like you're a valuable asset. It got harder and harder to be kind of on that side of things. And I thought I always have wanted to be make movies. So there's this whole other world that I have yet to work in. Like literally the title's the same, VFX editor. Did I know what that meant? Not really. But on the vendor side, you're like the inverse person from the client side. So they send you the stuff and you ingest it. You send it back to them and they take it. So you're sort of adjacent to them. And I thought, well, I could probably do that. I didn't know how. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I thought I could try.
Yeah, I wanted to know, what did you have to learn or like relearn when you made this switch? And like, what was the transition like? Did it seem a little bit smoother than you thought, or was it harder than you thought?
Well, I will say like I got really lucky in that when I finally got a call from Blumhouse to go and be their VFX editor on Megan 2.
Oh, so that was the thing. That was the catalyst that changed. Yeah.
You know, they interviewed me for it and they said, how well do you know Avid? And I hadn't seen Avid since I was in college. And I thought, I'm not even going to say I've seen Avid. I'm just going to say I'll figure it out. So I had to relearn Avid.
Okay.
So this was December of 2024. They said, okay, great, you're hired. We'll bring you on. And I was lucky because someone I had worked with a long time ago had also moved to the client side and she had put my name in.
Okay.
So that's how they found me. And she knew I wanted to make the switch.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, VFX editors on the vendor side, their hours count for the union.
Oh,
for the roster.
For the roster.
Yeah.
So that was those, which I didn't know for the longest. I didn't know until like 2020.
Yeah.
I was like, I could have been banking these hours.
Yeah.
I could have been banking these hours this whole time. So I had gotten on the roster during COVID because when COVID happened, that was the other reason, COVID. When COVID happened, I didn't know, I got laid off. And I didn't know where I was going to work again. And I just figured I'll get on the roster to open my options just so I could have more possibilities.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to limit myself just to vendor work. I was like, well, if a show comes calling, I want to be able to say yes.
Right.
So I'll get on the roster. And it took me 6 years to realize I could have been on the roster the whole time.
Oh my God.
But so anyway, so Megan called and they said, great, you can start in January. And so this is right before the hiatus. And they said, great, you'll start after a hiatus. Good luck. And I thought I should probably figure out Avid and I should probably figure out FileMaker. Yeah. Because I had no experience with either of those. And those are
important.
Two very important programs for client-side VFX work. And so
a little important.
So I downloaded the trial of Avid. And I downloaded a trial of FileMaker. For Avid, what I did was I just pulled up a really old short that I had done maybe 12 years earlier. I still had the plates, I still have the raw footage for. And I just recut it. I said, I'm going to redo my short in Avid because I know how it's supposed to look. And I don't know how Avid is going to make it happen, but I'll figure it out. Like the
king of figuring it out, Stephen.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like been my whole like thing.
Yeah.
My whole career is just, I'll figure it out.
I feel like that you kind of have to a little bit in this industry of just, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have that mentality, like I don't think you will have a lot of success because we're always facing things that we maybe don't know or we haven't done yet. And it's just a matter of how you deal with the thing you don't know. So I downloaded FileMaker and I started looking for a bunch of YouTube videos about like assistant editing and VFX editing and just to try to get my head around like the workflow part of it, just because when you're on the other side, like I know what I'm going to need to send, right? Like I know I'm going to need to send count sheets and I know I'm going to need to send refs and I know I'm going to need to send plates and do polls because I've gotten all of those things for 10 years.
Right.
How that happens exactly, I didn't know.
But it was good that you had the vendor experience because then you're able, like you just said, you know what they need and you know what they're looking for and why they need it.
So I'm going to all these YouTube videos and I found one, and I think they were like selling a tool to do pulls. And they were like, here's our FileMaker tool where you can export an EDL and bring it into FileMaker, and you can assign all the shot names and you can do all this stuff. And then it exports an ALE that you can bring back into Avid to make all your subclips with all your handles and all your fun stuff that you need. And I was like, oh, so FileMaker can do all that.
Yeah.
So with my trial of FileMaker, I said, I'm going to remake this tool.
Wow. Yeah.
So I started figuring out how to rebuild this tool because I'm not going to pay $100 for it.
Yeah.
And I also thought to myself, like, if I can figure out how it works, I will understand FileMaker way more than if I just buy a tool that I don't know how it works. So as I'm trying to figure out, like, first of all, like, what is an ALE? Like, what does an ALE actually look like? And then how do I generate an ALE out of FileMaker? And so I built a tool that mimicked this tool that was being sold because I thought it would be more worthwhile for me to learn how to make it in the long run than just buying something that I didn't know how it worked.
Yeah.
Steven's VFX codebook is crazy. It's insane to look at. It's like the most intense VFX codebook I think I've ever seen.
I remember when I walked into Megan, I get on a call with the existing VFX editor, and he was in New Zealand. He started walking me through how they did the pulls. And he was like, well, we take all of our clips and we extend out the handles of each clip. We put it all in a timeline, one clip at a time, export that as an EDL and send it to the DI house. And I was like, wait, you do it manually? Because I had just built this tool. And I was like, I think I can automate this.
Isn't it crazy when you like figure out you're doing this task and you're like, wait, I can automate this. And then you figure out how to automate it and you're like, dude, my whole life has changed now.
I have so many tools.
That
I have 4 more hours in my day now.
That movie has a lot of action in it. And when you cut action scenes, you drop a lot of frames. And every time you drop a frame, when you're pulling that shot, that cut point is a cut point on an EDL. And you have to you have to account for those dropped frames. When you're doing like if you have a 50 frame shot with a drop frame, that plate needs to be 51 frames long.
Yeah.
Like in the timeline.
Right.
So you have to extend it by a frame. You have to go to the frame, you have to extend it and match it up. And then you have a 51 frame shot that you're pulling for a 50 frame shot. It was stuff like that. And like doing all that stuff manually is so tedious.
Oh yeah.
And whereas I can just drop a marker and
you
say,
may forget it too. You may forget to add on whatever you need.
My tool accounts for retimes. Like if a shot is got 125% retime, it does the math for me. So I don't have to think about like the extra handle frames required for retimes.
So you're making this switch to Megan. Did you feel like then that you had to sort of prove yourself in a way, or were you like, I got this? I'm pretty good right now.
I felt like I had to prove myself.
Okay, you did.
I felt very much like I didn't belong for a little bit. And then I think it was that meeting where they were going over how they were doing polls. And I was like, oh God, please, I'm going to do this better.
Yeah.
And that's when I truly felt like, maybe I can make it. Maybe I can do this. But I still I didn't know Avid. Like I had recut that short, but that didn't, recutting a short is not the same thing as working on a Nexus on a feature length film. So it was a lot of I remember, you feel really confident about some things like that poll tool that I was creating, but then it's like, I had to go to the assistant editor and be like, hey, how do I jump to a specific time code in Avid? And she's like, yeah, you just click and type in the numpad.
Yeah.
I was like, what is that?
But this is so easy now.
It makes sense. It's really intuitive now. So there were certain things, but I felt like I was really fortunate that when I got to the show, the VFX editor who's on the show was not a VFX editor by trade. So there was really no sense of here's the best way to do things. It was just we're just trying to figure it out just as much as you are.
Yeah.
So that was, in a sense, probably the perfect place for me to land as someone who's always kind of been I'll figure it out. Just being in a situation where we were all just kind of figuring it out. Also at the time, Blumhouse, because they had already been working on the show and I was inheriting it, they had a whole database that they were using for visual effects and like their count sheets they were using. And I had to kind of adapt to their system. But at the same time, in my spare time, I was like building out my own database and building out my own tracker and building out all my own tools so that when I could get a new show, I would be like ready to go with my own stuff.
So you didn't inherit anything.
No.
As far as like a VFX tracker, you
No,
built
I
everything
built, I
from
built
scratch.
everything.
Wow.
I think that's what I have enjoyed most about making the switch is not so much like working in the editing room with the director and with the editor. It's that there's more puzzles to solve. So the biggest challenge of working on the client side is that you're always chasing the changes of the editor. And when the cut changes, everything has to change.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out the best and easiest ways to constantly update your database to match what the editor has, because I don't want my database to be out of date.
Right.
I
of
want my
course.
database to be a reflection of what's in the edit, which means I'm constantly round tripping stuff into FileMaker and I'm constantly exporting EDLs and tabbed cut lists and all this stuff to try and get as much information out of the Avid as I can and into my database. That to me is been the biggest kind of source of enjoyment is how do I make this as efficient as I can to make sure I'm on top of the edit as much as possible. Because you never want to be in a situation where a shot has been added or a shot has been cut that's like a really expensive shot and miss that it's out or miss that it's back, because that's you just have to call the vendor and they're not going to be happy. So it's being able to just constantly like make and refine tools has been really fun. And honestly more fun than I ever would have thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you think the vendor side gets wrong about working with cutting rooms, if there is anything, and if there's anything that cutting rooms get wrong with working with vendors?
Well, I
Well, maybe not wrong, but like,
yeah.
as
Something
a
can be done
vendor-
better.
Yeah, as a vendor, what like infuriates you about the cutting room, and then vice versa. If you're a cutting room, what infuriates you about the
I
vendor?
think the thing that's most frustrating from the vendor side is cut changes
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
and just constantly having to change, which is why when we have a cut change, I'm only updating if it's an extension that needs a repull or
yeah.
changes or is outside of their current working range. Like from my perspective, it doesn't matter if we trimmed off an extra 4 frames. Fine, I'll have 12 frames of handles instead of 8. Like, I don't care. I'm not going to send them an update for every single frame that changes.
It's more if they need more information of that shot.
Right.
Like,
Like, and so because it's not your only show, right? Like,
yeah.
anytime you're getting that much stuff, it's like, okay, this show is taking over my life.
Yeah.
It is actively hurting all the other shows because there's too much. Like, just send me a change at the end of the week. Right?
Yeah.
Or don't send me a change.
What about vice versa? Now that you're a VFX editor on the cutting room side, is there anything that vendors do now that you're like...
everything the vendors do is
Well, of course, because you were from vendors, so you're probably like, I could have done this better.
Every time I get something that's like editorially wrong, like the frame range is off or they're missing a repo or something, that's what was my job to correct before it went to the client, I feel like I take it personally.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I know better. Like, you didn't look at this. I know you didn't look at this because if you had looked at it, you would have fixed it.
Yeah.
So I think I take stuff a little more personally when it's an editorial issue versus like artistically is what it is. Like, vendors have people in charge of their artistic direction and their VFX supervisors. They're trying to do the best they can. They don't always get it right. And you have to understand that. And that's why you do notes and why you do passes and why you try and get together and talk about shots. But when stuff's editorially wrong, because I did that job for so long, it's extra bad.
Yeah.
So
it's extra frustrating.
Yeah.
Stephen, I know that you're married.
Yes.
Do you have kids?
Yes. I have 2 daughters.
2 daughters. How old are they?
My oldest daughter is 3 3/4.
Wow.
And my younger daughter is 1 1/2.
So tell us what that's like,
It's
having a
hard.
family and working in what we do.
Well, it's really hard, first of all, because
One of these days, someo's going to say that it's easy.
yeah, it's definitely not
Like,
easy.
what's your
I mean,
secret?
it would be hard if I didn't work.
Yeah. Or it would be easy if I was just in a different job.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. No, it's always going to be hard. You know, the hard thing is like not being there in the evenings for them for bedtime or getting home right at bedtime. And then
Because what are your hours looking like?
I work from like 9:30 to 7:30 usually.
Okay. That's actually not too awful.
I mean, there's been weeks where I've done like 100-hour weeks.
Okay. Yeah.
But generally, I'm trying
On
to
a
get out by
normal
7:30,
week, yeah.
so I can be home at bedtime or
Mm-hmm.
during bedtime. You know, I think I'm lucky. My wife's parents both worked in the film industry,
Oh, okay.
so she at least like grew up with kind of knowing what it was
Yeah.
like to have a dad who was off on set for 3 months in Atlanta or Colorado or wherever he would be shooting.
And she still decided to marry you.
Look, she knew me back when I was still trying to be like a production person. So she's been with me the whole journey.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I think that's fortunate. And she, you know, she's a teacher, so she gets off pretty early, so we can kind of trade off, which is nice. Like I'm there in the mornings. When she's gone for work.
Does she have summers off too?
Yes,
or does she do?
She definitely has summers off. And
I know some people who like will tutor or something during the summer, but I didn't know.
So my younger daughter was born 7 weeks early and was in the NICU for like 6.5 weeks.
Oh,
and it was
wow.
really stressful. And I was unemployed at the time. And she came home in October on like October 6th of 2024. And like 2 days later, I got a call from someone saying, "Can you work starting Monday?"
Oh my God.
I was like, and I'd been unemployed because of the strikes
Yeah.
for like 9 months.
Yeah, so you were kind of like,
I couldn't not take it.
yeah.
But the stress of having her just come home she was like 5 pounds.
Oh my God.
And suddenly I'm saying like, sorry, Amelia, I'm going to be gone for all day now, every day. Like, good luck.
My God.
Jeez.
Was real. And then getting no sleep because she was essentially a newborn.
Yeah.
So she would sleep 2 hours at a time and I'm up. Yeah. So she came home and then like 2 months later, that's when Megan called. And so not only do I have a newborn, but I'm dealing with like essentially a career pivot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, being a parent in the film industry is doable. It's just, I mean, any you guys got to make it work, and you have to have an understanding with your spouse or partner to make it work.
Yeah.
If somebody was interested in VFX editorial, either vendor side or client side, what advice would you give to that person to like get started today?
Don't be afraid of learning. Like, don't be afraid of not knowing something and trying to figure it out. So much of what I do is just figuring stuff out and trying to make the best of what we have. I would not be where I am unless I was willing to try things I didn't know and willing to try things that I maybe didn't have experience with, but keeping an open mind, especially software related, because everything kind of has led to where I am. So like my ability to say like, I'll learn this software has carried me through my whole career, and not being afraid to say like, oh, I can't apply for this job because they need a specific software or they want a specific experience with this software, and like not being afraid of saying like, I think I can learn that, and trying to learn it and asking questions and keeping an open mind. And I think just generally being willing to try new things, because I didn't know I wanted to be in post when I first came to LA, and I fell into it and figured out like, oh, this is actually a great job. Or a great job for me specifically. Like, I think being able to say like, maybe I don't know exactly what I want to do, but trying new things will help guide me to where I will find success.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
I mean, it's a great note to end on.
Yeah. Let's go into a splice and spew.
Splice and spew.
Michael, do you have one? Or do you want me to go first?
I can go first.
You want to go first?
Both Leanna and Stephen are aware I'm dealing with a bunch of cat health issues right now. So my splice is for the lovely, incredible people at VCA West Los Angeles Animal Hospital. Just the most brilliant, like helpful people, like throughout this whole process. They've just been so supportive and so helpful. So huge shout out to the doctors and nurses there that were just like so tantamount in helping me navigate this nightmare of a situation. So if you guys have any animal problems, take them to VCA West Los Angeles Animal Hospital.
How are the cats?
Good. I need to get out of here and go take care of them.
All right. I'm going to splice about getting a professional massage. If you guys like massages, you should definitely go, because I thought a little bit ago, I kind of came to this realization that sitting at a desk using your arms really like hurts your back muscles. Like it's weird, like right in the middle of your back, it like can get pretty tiring, and obviously sitting and all that. So I decided to go get a massage like once a month. And then when I stopped working, I stopped getting massages, but I'm getting back into them. And it is one of the best things ever, because they know exactly like the points to hit and like how to do it right. And like, you know, they're pretty open about like if they're pressing too hard or not, like you just tell them. And I think I'm going to get one today, and that's why I'm going to splice about it, because my entire body is really sore from just like running and working out. And so I'm like, I need to get one because I'm getting old and my bones and muscles are like breaking. So I need someone to just kind of like massage it out and knead it out. So you should definitely go get one. They're not, if you look hard enough for massage places, they're not that like, I probably pay about $100 for an hour-long massage, like with the tip included and all that, which isn't that bad considering if you were to go to like a super fancy spa, it might be like $300 for an hour. But consider it, people. Consider it.
Running.
Splice or spew? Is that
Both.
good or bad?
It's just a both. I'm training for a marathon right now. It will be my third marathon. And I'm in the phase of the training block that is, I'm in the longest of the long runs. And I like running. I'm a runner. I've run since like 2010. I've been a runner.
Wow.
Before running became cool. There's something that I hate about running for 3 hours alone. That you do it so rarely, and it's just so hard to motivate yourself to keep moving those legs. So yeah, I did 16 miles yesterday, and after about an hour and a half, it just gets so boring.
Yeah.
Like when you're during the marathon, it's great because like you're the environment and you're with a bunch of other runners, and it's like a whole like social thing. When you're by yourself in the heat.
Yeah.
And you're
brutal.
12 miles in.
Not fun.
And you have 4 miles to go. And you just want nothing more than to just give up. That's where I was at yesterday. Just running around the valley in the heat of the day. So yeah, both. I love running. I didn't love yesterday.
Yeah.
Cassie, you want to round us out?
This is a spew. As a user of social media, I find that sometimes I learn about people and influencers against my will who I don't want to know anything about. And I have learned about this person recently named Clavicular.
Oh, I've heard about this.
And I learned about a practice that he engages in that really just ruined my week when I heard about this. Have you ever heard of bone smashing?
You hit your face with a hammer.
Yeah,
right?
You hit your face with a hammer in the hopes that you will damage your jaw and then it will grow back in a way that's more aesthetically pleasing. My older brother is a physician. And my degree is in physiology. And I just want to tell people, anyone, any age, all people, don't do that.
Do not do this.
I actually have an anecdote that I want to tell. You can use it or not.
Please.
Okay, so when you're working on a show on the vendor side, everything has a code name. Every show has its own unique little working title. And it's all kind of, sometimes I don't even remember the show names, the actual like release name of what I worked on, because all it was for me was a code name. Mm-hmm. Was working at Crafty Apes, we had 3 shows happening at the same time. One was Guardians of the Galaxy 3. One was the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special. And one was Unfrosted, the Netflix Pop-Tart movie.
Oh my God.
Okay, so the Christmas special's code name was Pop-Tart.
Oh, God.
Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was Hot Christmas.
Oh, my God.
And we had a Pop-Tart movie that was just called Unfrosted, and it didn't have a code name. It was just Unfrosted. So I had Pop-Tart was not the Pop-Tart movie, Hot Christmas was not the Christmas thing, and Unfrosted was just Unfrosted. It was so confusing.
Unfrosted could have been the Christmas thing or the Pop-Tart thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, that code names... Not my. If you're talking about things that are hard to keep straight, sometimes
code names.
It's what code name when they are completely nonsensical.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Sips and Clips. You can catch us on Instagram at Sips and Clips Pod or email us at sipsandclipspod@gmail.com. And you keep on sipping while we keep on clipping.
Bye-bye. Sips and Clips is a podcast produced by Leanne McFalls and Michael Schusterman. Logo designed by Mike Knoll. Production sound by Cassidy Lagan. Post-production sound by Zach Griffin. Follow us on Instagram at Sips and Clips Pod or email us at sipsandclipspod@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.